Harper Audio presents The Upside of Irrationality, The Unexpected Benefits of Defying Logic at Work and at Home, by Dan Ariely. Read by Simon Jones. Copyright 2010 by Dan Ariely. Production copyright 2010 by HarperCollins Publishers. To my teachers, collaborators and students for making research fun and exciting. And to all the participants who took part in our experiments over the years, you are the engine of this research, and I am deeply grateful for all your help. Introduction. Lessons from procrastination and medical side effects. I don't know about you, but I have never met anyone who never procrastinates. Delaying annoying tasks is a nearly universal problem, one that is incredibly hard to curb, no matter how hard we try to exert our willpower and self-control, or how many times we resolve to reform. Allow me to share a personal story about one way I learned to deal with my own tendency to procrastinate. Many years ago, I experienced a devastating accident. A large magnesium flare exploded next to me and left 70% of my body covered with third-degree burns, an experience I wrote about in Predictably Irrational. As if to add insult to injury, I acquired hepatitis from an infected blood transfusion after 3 weeks in the hospital. Obviously, there is never a good time to get a virulent liver disease, but the timing of its onset was particularly unfortunate because I was already in such bad shape. The disease increased the risk of complications, delayed my treatment, and caused my body to reject many skin transplants. To make matters worse, the doctors didn't know what type of liver disease I had. They knew I wasn't suffering from hepatitis A or B, but they couldn't identify the strain. After a while, the illness subsided, but it still slowed my recovery by flaring up from time to time and wreaking havoc on my system. 8 years later, when I was in graduate school, a flare-up hit me hard. I checked into the student health center, and after many blood tests, the doctor gave me a diagnosis. It was hepatitis C, which had recently been isolated and identified. As lousy as I felt, I greeted this as good news. First, I finally knew what I had. Second, a promising new experimental drug called interferon looked as if it might be an effective treatment for hepatitis C. The doctor asked whether I'd consider being part of an experimental study to test the efficacy of interferon. Given the threats of liver fibrosis and cirrhosis and the possibility of early death, it seemed that being part of the study was clearly the lesser of two evils. The initial protocol called for self-injections of interferon 3 times a week. The doctors advised me that after each injection I would experience flu-like symptoms, including fever, nausea, headaches, and vomiting, warnings that I soon discovered to be perfectly accurate. But I was determined to kick the disease, so every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday evening over the next year and a half, I carried out the following ritual. Once I got home, I would take a needle from the medicine cabinet, open the refrigerator, load the syringe with the right dosage of interferon, plunge the needle deep into my thigh, and inject the medication. Then I would lie down in a big hammock, the only interesting piece of furniture in my loft-like student apartment, from which I had a perfect view of the television. I kept a bucket within reach to catch the vomit that would inevitably come and a blanket to fend off the shivering. About an hour later, the nausea, shivering, and headache would set in, and at some point I would fall asleep. By noon the next morning, I would have more or less recovered, and would return to my classwork and research. Along with the other patients in the study, I wrestled not only with feeling sick much of the time, but also with the basic problem of procrastination and self-control. Every injection day was miserable. I had to face the prospect of giving myself a shot followed by a 16-hour bout of sickness in the hope that the treatment would cure me in the long run. I had to endure what psychologists call a negative immediate effect for the sake of a positive long-term effect. This is the type of problem we all experience when we fail to do short-term tasks that will be good for us down the road. Despite the prodding of conscience, we often would rather avoid doing
Sample complete. Ready to continue?